Listen,
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
we know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Can't get enough baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
It doesn't matter what time zone it is. There's nobody I'd rather have on than Sam Dykstra right now. Have you gotten used to the Pacific Coast time zone yet, Sam?
A little bit. Because things are over by 8:00 at night. Like the entire college football scene is done, except for if maybe there's a game of Hawaii or something. I got to give them credit to it. They got that figured out. Late night sports here are fantastic.
Well, in case people don't know, Sam is embedded in the Arizona Fall League, and this is why we want to pick his brain. He always makes us smarter, more entertained, more educated, all the above. And this is just another example of it with the Arizona Fall League stuff. And so, I'm not going to pretend like being immersed in the playoffs and World Series. I'm seeing dribs and drabs and seeing your coverage and everything else. And I think that honestly, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this. That's why I have you on. But it is, I will say this, there is an enormous appetite for this, Sam. And you tell me how you feel about this, because I don't know if you know this, but not every team is in the World Series. Not every team is in the postseason. And people like the idea of what might be happening, what might be coming. And also, oh my God, you see what he did in the Arizona Fall League? Oh, let's go. Let's get excited about the future. But my first thing is do you sense, you've done this a couple of years, but do you sense that there is more of this eyeballs on this endeavor, on this activity right now, the Arizona Fall League?
I think there is locally. You are more interested in what your team's prospects are doing here than anywhere else. In terms of it being interest league wide, I think that's a little bit tougher. It depends. It goes year to year, honestly, on who's here, how many top 100 prospects actually get sent here. This league used to be treated as what we called a prospect finishing school, where you would send guys who are close to major league readiness. Let's get them more at bats. Let's round off some of their skills ahead of spring training. Now it's more, here's a guy who missed a bunch of innings or a bunch of at-bats because of injuries. Let's help him make that up at the end of the year. Sometimes you get really impressive prospects to do that. And it varies by team. Some teams do send their top guys here. I mean, you look at the San Diego Padres, they sent Leo Dallas DeVries, who's signed internationally back in January. He's only 17 years old. Ethan Salas is not much older than he is. Those guys are both here, as opposed to some other orgs like the Red Sox, who didn't send Christian Campbell. They didn't send Marcelo Meyer. They didn't send Roman Anthony, some of these guys at the upper levels. But if something big happens to your team, I'll get interest from, say, Milwaukee, because Juan Baez is hitting over 500, stuff like that. So I think people are really clued into this stuff just to get, like you said, it's going to be a long winter. This is your last chance for some of these people to get a little information on their clubs before we kind of go into a down period.
All right. So you mentioned some of the top guys, let's just cut to the chase. Like, if you look at the MLB pipeline top 100, give me the top guys. Give me the guys who the spotlights are on. And then we're going to get to like the who has performed, who has gotten on the radar, all of that. But who are the top guys participating in this year?
Yeah, I mean, the number one ranked guy we have on our list who showed up to the Fall League was Jack Caglione, Florida Gators legend the last 2 years, led Division I in homers last year, I should say, in 2023, then hit 2 more homers as a junior this year, finished second in Division I. So he's got all the power in the world. He was a 6th overall pick in July, and he's here. That's rare. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. The Royals have said they just want him playing in a pro style of setting. He got some time at high A at the end of the year. I was shocked he got here. He looked a little fatigued by the end. You can imagine he's been playing in actual games that count since very early spring. Now he's going to do that all the way through November. Yeah, he's going to look a little fatigued, and that's what we've seen in the fall league. But then the other night I saw him hit his first AFL homer. It was 110 the opposite way to left center off a lefty, and he's a lefty. It was lefty 110. So the power is still very much there for Jack Haglione. The biggest arm here is Andrew Painter, who I actually got to catch yesterday. A lot of fans might remember him as 2023 spring training. The Phillies were talking him up as a 19-year-old who could have made the opening day roster. He was showing excellent stuff. He had a great first full season. He was our pitching prospect of the year in 2022. Had a sub-2 ERA. Is really tall. Shows upper 90s fastball. But had elbow issues, and they kept delaying talk of surgery and all the way until July 2023. So he missed all of 2023, all of 2024, got back healthy enough just in time to make his debut in the fall league. He's made 3 starts so far. The first 2 were 2 innings. Yesterday was 3, touched 99, showed a really hard slider. It comes across as a cutter, but it's a slider. That's what he told me yesterday. He's got a curveball, hasn't had to break out the changeup yet, but the velo is there. The command is there. It's been really impressive stuff from Andrew Painter. And then Colt Emerson was another one we had our eyes on. Really nice first full season for him. He was a first-round pick of the Mariners. But he has good bat-to-ball ability. He's looked really good at shortstop. All the pieces are there for him to potentially climb all the way, maybe to AAA and knock on the door for the Seattle system in 2025.
Drew Gilbert. He's there.
Drew Gilbert is there. Yep.
Yeah.
He's a Mets prospect coming off a hamstring injury for much of the year for the Mets. He's played a lot of right field for that Scottsdale team here. I got to see him hit 2 homers, which is very much his game. Like you look at him, you don't think he's much of a power guy. He's pretty well built. But he hits the ball to the pull side and he lifts it really well. And that's how he's going to get his homers. That is a really good skill of his. He's got a good arm. He can be above average speed. He hasn't really shown it much so far in the fall league that I've seen. I don't know if he's protecting that hamstring or what, but he might be heating up here. I saw him the other day. He had a 2-homer game, again, lifting that ball to the pole side. So we'll see how things go. It's a 6-week season. We're barely through 3 weeks so far, so maybe he can kind of keep this momentum going.
Well, I mean, the reason I asked about him is because he was coming off that haul. The Max Scherzer they're playing for 2026 haul, the Mets haul of the trade deadline. That he was one of them, and and when you get on the radar, you get on the radar. That's what people want to know, right? Some of the names that you mentioned, like they are on the radar. Like, is there any other guys that maybe like even had drifted down the list, your top 100 list, but people sort of know the name from the previous few years who are participating?
Well, Ethan Salas he hasn't really dropped in our top 100 yet because he is so young, but he's somebody who anybody I talk to in the industry, at least leading up to the AFL, you would bring up his name this year and they would throw up their hands and be like, I don't know what to make of this guy.
Really?
He was the breakout prospect of 2023, climbed 3 levels. Again, was signed in January, age 17 season, finished it in AA. I mean, the Padres just got super aggressive, as is their wont. But they sent him to high A this year and he was struggling month in and month out. Just couldn't really make good connection with the ball. Was lifting it okay, but it wasn't showing enough power to get it out or get it into the alleys. And then from August on, he kind of became a doubles machine. But again, he played the full year. He wasn't hurt as a catcher. You didn't think, all right, this guy needs more workload, but they sent him to the fall league. I think part of that is the Padres have their spring training facility here in Peoria. Peoria is a fall league team. So if you want to just keep eyes on him, this is where you send him and keep him close by, keep him in a place that he's comfortable and knows pretty well. And he's continued to be a doubles machine here in the fall league. And I think he's kind of buoyed his stock again. I mean, he's a top 20 prospect for us. He's really good defensively. Every pitcher I talk to about throwing to him loves throwing to the guy. Yu Darvish threw to the guy when he was 17 years old and came away pretty impressed. And, his caught stealing rate has improved. He talked to me about that the other day, saying, like, I was chasing pop times. I need to stop doing that. I just need to make accurate throws. The ball would be fine. Like, just go get get the right accurate throw instead of trying to be like a 1.8, 1.9 pop time guy. I thought that was pretty fascinating and pretty advanced for such a teenager. So he's somebody who's kind of like, if you came in here scratching your head on who Ethan Salas can be, like, can he be that superstar? I'm not necessarily saying it's fully back. It's only been 3 weeks, but he's fit right in here in a way that I thought, well, if he struggles, that makes sense. He's still so young.
That's a great one. That's a great pull by you. I mean, because that's all we were talking about. We were talking about Ethan Salas. Even in spring training, I remember talking to, when I stopped by Padres camp, talking to Xander Bogaerts. Hey, what do you think about this kid? Because it was like, he's a kid. He's a kid among adults. So, yeah. So let me go to pitchers. Like you mentioned Painter, but let me go any other pitchers that sort of have jumped out. And I know that it might be a little bit more difficult just because, it's not like these guys are going to go out and pitch 7 or 8 innings. But what's the perception, or who has jumped out in terms of pitchers?
Yeah, it hasn't been a great pitching league this year. The fall league is always hitter friendly because we're here in the desert, right? It's dry desert air. Guys are going to hit the ball pretty hard and see the ball pretty well here. But also, teams are typically more protective of their pitchers. Like, if you're at 100 innings and they're like, well, we wanted to get you to 120, but we're not going to get you 20 more in the fall league just for the heck of it and risk further injury. So there aren't a ton of top names here. Some ones who are, well, one who I was seeking out was Arizona Diamondbacks left-hander Yu-Min Lin, who, I brought up Darvish before. It kind of reminds me of him just because he has so many different pitches to throw. He's not a big velo guy. He's only going to be like 90, 91. He can throw a four-seamer, a sinker, so he's already moving a few different directions. He's got a slider, he's got a cutter, he's got a changeup, he's got a curveball, and he's willing to go to all of them. Hearing from him, it's kind of like, okay, this pitch isn't working today, so I'm going to go to one of the other 5. Like, it'll work okay. But I think he's going to only get more mature. He reached AAA at the end of the year. He missed time this year because he got hit in the face by a foul ball in the dugout and suffered facial fractures, just a complete freak injury. So it's not a shoulder, it's not an elbow. And he's just making up for some of those lost innings here. Sometimes if that fastball isn't well located, it can be hit because it isn't highly velo. But I think the directionality of his pitches and the movement profiles is pretty interesting. Eric Swan of the Los Angeles Dodgers kind of gets overshadowed because the Dodgers are in the World Series right now, and he wasn't a top 30 prospect at least at the end of the year, but he's been touching 99 here. He's got a changeup in the low 90s, which normally you're like, that's not really great separation, but it is when you're throwing the fastball. Have been like, oh, this guy's kind of a dude, and the Dodgers have done it again. They do this really well of adding velocity and getting the most out of their pitchers. So he's another one I'm keeping an eye on, and one I just like the story of, and I'm writing a story on him now, so check out that soon on MLB.com. There's some promo for you.
Absolutely.
Is Jonathan Pintaro with the Mets. This is somebody that they signed out of the Pioneer League in June. He was told he pitched 2 innings for his Pioneer League team in Glacier, which is just outside Glacier National Park. The Pioneer League as a league had an ERA in the 7s this year. So anybody who can pitch somewhat decently well, and guess who did that 2 years ago was Zach Penrod. Zach Penrod did that last year. The Red Sox signed him. He made the major leagues this year. Pintaro's kind of on that track. They signed him on June 2nd. He got taken out of the game in the 2nd inning. He saw somebody warming in the bullpen. He's like, what the hell? And then his manager's like, oh yeah, the Mets purchased your contract. 4 days later, he was pitching for High A Brooklyn, and he got a 4-inning save. He finished the year at AAA. He was telling me the other day, like, he went to Division II college and Shorter University in Georgia and didn't have any data there whatsoever. Went to the MLB draft league, learned a little bit more about himself there, went to the Pioneer League. He had an owner who was giving him hit tracks data, TrackMan data, anything he could get his hands on. And he had a fastball cutter, and he's like, I need more than this. So he added a sweeper, he added a sinker, he added a changeup. He worked with Austin Nola, former major league catcher, brother of Aaron Nola, who lived in Montana, and was telling him, hey, you're tipping your pitches. I can see your grip on the backside of your delivery. So he put all those pieces together, finished the year at AAA for the Mets, and like, he might be knocking on the door next year. He's like, we want you throwing with the major league ball. So I love stories like that.
What a great story. What a great story. Good for you. Go check that out.
Now I need to finish writing it. This is going to be my impetus to like actually file the thing because I need to
But
get
but
this
you
over
know how it works, Sam. You're workshopping it. It's great. It's great.
with here.
So, but that's a great story. So you think that he's potentially, like, that's another part of this. Like, everyone wants to know how close are you, because these guys, how close are you? How close are you? You think potentially 2025, this is a guy. I mean, listen, I mean, Zach Penrod, no one ever thought he was going to make the major leagues 2024, but he did. So for this guy,
Right.
it's 2025 is a realistic thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he finished the year at AAA.
Yeah.
So I think this was his age 26 season. So it's gotta happen either next year or the year after that. But like, I think he's got a deep enough pitch mix now. The Mets liked his cutter enough. I think getting that pro instruction has been huge for him. He's probably more of a bullpen option at this point in his career, but like, so what? You go from the Pioneer League to the bigs, he'll pitch any innings that they give him, and that's a player development win for the Mets at a time where that's what good orgs do.
Yeah, all right, so give me some hitters that have jumped out, and they don't have to be names, but give me the stars of the people who are like, oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah, one is Zaire Hope, again, another Dodger. Came over in the Michael Busch trade with the Cubs last offseason. The Cubs got a starting first baseman that was pretty good, but they also got the Dodgers got Jackson Ferris, who's a top 100 prospect for us now, and Zaire Hope, who is a top 100 prospect. He's going to be one in our next update. I can pretty much tell you that right now. He's a plus runner. He's got good power from the left side. He's got a strong arm from center field, can play a quality center field. It's not an overly complicated look in the box. It's pretty simple, but he hit a homer here that was 470 feet, according to StatCast.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's dry desert air. I get it. The ball's going to travel more here, but like 470, literally everybody else is hitting here. Nobody else has done that. And he's only played single A ball to this point. So if he can keep that speed, keep that ability to play center, and may only grow into more power, maybe, because this was his first full season, I think Zaire Hope could be really special. Jose Briseño is another one. He's tied for the AFL lead in homers with 6. I remember in the spring being in Lakeland, Florida, and AJ Hinch being gathered, with the Tigers media, and I was there for the day because I was covering the minor league side. And he was talking about Briseño, and he was like, yeah, I'm excited to see him. We got him in that clubhouse the other day, and I'm like, this is not a young kid. He had barely played single A ball to that point. And he's like, he fits right in here. Then Briseño had a knee issue during the year. They've moved him from catcher to first base, basically just to get him off his knees, not get him in the squat. But he's hit the ball as hard as anybody here from the left side. And he's looked a little rough at first base. The phrase I love to go back to is that he's very much a tell 'em wash player. He's still learning first base, like in Scott Hatterberg and Moneyball. But I think if he can stick, like, he'll be okay there. If he can just get average there, he's going to pound the ball really well. He's got a good approach. I think he's going to fly through the Tigers system next year. And they've done a really good job of developing major league types. I mean, you look at that team that made it for a postseason run. Riley Green, homegrown guy. Parker Meadows, homegrown guy. Spencer Torkelson, I know the thought is still out on him, but he came up through that system. I mean, they do a pretty good job of graduating their best prospects to the major leagues.
All right, so I'm going to ask you, the last thing I'm going to ask you is about, like, when you look at this World Series, who's the guy that you said, oh, I never thought that guy would be participating in the World Series considering a year ago, right? Like a year ago, we're analyzing all minor leaguers on the Dodgers and the Yankees. But before we get to that, I do want to ask you about the rules. Like, a lot of there's been a lot of play on social media about, I think it was Drew Gilbert, like the check swing, the appeal check swing. What insight can you give in terms of, because they'd like to experiment with rules with the Arizona Fall Leagues. What insight can you give in that regard?
Yeah, so this is very much an experimental rule, like you said. Like, this is not something that is coming to Major League Baseball in 2025. They're just trying it out. It's only in games played at Salt River. But it's basically, and Rob, I'm sure you know this, the check swing is not defined in the MLB rulebook right now. Mm-hmm. The only definition of a swing is an attempt to strike at the ball. How you take that as an umpire is completely on you. Now, of course, over the decades and basically centuries of this point of the sport being played, we've basically figured out what that means. Everybody assumes it means breaking the plane of home plate or breaking your wrists, either one of those two things. But it's not legally defined in the game. So this is a way of maybe codifying that. Bat tracking is becoming more of a thing. You saw on Baseball Savant this year, bat speed, we can track that now. Well, for tracking bat speed, we can track the path of the bat. So they're trying out something. It's at a 45-degree angle. If you need to picture that in your brain, 45 degrees is the angle at which the foul lines are from home plate. So it's bigger than most people are expecting. But I think that's in part, and this is just me speaking here, nobody's told me this on or off the record, but I think it's you go out pretty far and then you reel it in, right? You just see how far it's going to be, and then you try to. It's experimental stage right now. So people who watch and be like, that looked like a swing to me, and then they review it and they're like, well, it didn't break the 45-degree angle, so no, it's actually a ball. It's weird to see right now for a lot of folks, but it's just trying something out. And you've seen some of the hitters, Brent Rooker of the Oakland A's, or of just the A's now, replied positively to it. I saw a clip on social media of Tommy Troy of the Arizona Diamondbacks, who's playing in Salt River, saying like, hey, this is pretty hitter friendly. That's fine. So many of the game's alterations right now and experiments have been towards let's tilt the balance of power back towards hitters just a little bit. And think of like how many times you watch a game and there's a check swing call you disagree with, or it feels it's not that many. So right now it's only 2 challenges per team per game. If you use them up before the 9th inning, you will get one in the 9th in case there's like a game-ending call that happens on a check swing. They'll go to the video board. It's pretty seamless. It happens pretty quick. It's like anybody who's ever seen ABS stuff. You just check the video board. The entire stadium can see it. Game starts again in a few seconds. But we'll see where it goes from here. I mean, it's still very much in the experimental stage, and the AFL has a history of this between ABS, bigger bases, pitch clocks. All that stuff was tested here first.
Let's do it. I mean, what are we waiting for? Honestly, it's like, I remember the first person who brought this up to me. This was, I think it was in 2020. Like JD Martinez, like I said, well, what rule would you change? And he's like that, the check swing. Like, why can't we appeal this? This is so. Yeah. So let's go. Let's do it. All right, Sam. The last thing is, you look at the World Series. Who is the player or players you're like, I would not a year ago have envisioned that they would be playing in the World Series? Is there anybody?
Oh, there is. I mean, there's one that jumps right out to me, and it's Brent Honeywell Jr. What a fascinating career for that guy.
Oh, by the way, can I stop you?
Go for it.
We just had the World Series media day. We were just talking about it. And so I sat down with Brent a few days ago during the LCS, and I just said, talk to me about his screwball. Like, talk to me about the screwball. That's it. And for about 9-10 minutes, that's what he did. His dad's cousin was Mike Marshall. He would go way back when Cy Young as a reliever. Taught the screwball was passed on. Nobody throws this pitch. Coincidentally, with the tragic passing of Fernando Valenzuela, obviously this is brought to the surface because Valenzuela threw a screwball. I mean, that's what I remember about Fernando, one of the things. And so we at this World Series media day, and I think maybe like one of your cohorts at MLB.com, he was asking about this, and I had already talked to him about it, but I was still interested in listening to him, and he talked so passionately about this pitch, and this guy, in the times that I've got a chance to know him, and we've got a chance to know him because of this bullpen connection with the Godfather Joe Kelly, and I've talked to him also, Sam, about this is a guy who won the Futures Game MVP, and he's like, and we have the photo of Kopech and Flaherty dumping a bucket of Gatorade on him at the Futures Game. So anyway, my point is that I'm glad you brought him up because he has become one of the most interesting, fascinating, and also subtly valuable guys for the Dodgers. But you go. I took up too much air when it came to, you just hit the sweet spot when it came to Brent Honeywell being top of mind for me.
No, it just means, I've been appearing on the show a decent amount now. We're simpatico now.
Right, exactly. There you go.
And now this all goes. But you brought up that Futures Game. I mean, I was at that game, and It's very rare because there are so many pitchers who appear in a futures game that a pitcher truly stands out. They may have an inning or two to really show off. Honeywell was the MVP of that game, and it was pretty clear that he was the MVP of that game. He looked so at ease on that mound. I remember talking to Chance Sisco, who was in the Orioles organization at the time, who was catching him. I was like, what were you calling? He was like, I was trying to ask for that screwball so many times because I just wanted to see it. And he's like, no, now's not the time. Now's not the time. But like everybody was so interested in that pitch then. And it's just been such a long and interesting career for Honeywell since because of arm injuries, just consistent arm injuries. And I was in Indianapolis earlier this summer to go see Paul Skeens when Paul Skeens was still in AAA and dominating AAA. We all know that. But Honeywell came in that game too. And I was like, oh, Brent landed with the Pirates. Okay, great. That's like an opportunity for him to maybe break through. Didn't quite work out with the Pirates. And now here he is with the Dodgers and carving out a significant role, which like the role is mop-up man. I mean, he talked about it, right? In the NLCS, save the dogs. Like my job here is just to take a licking. It reminds me of Tim Wakefield in the 2004 ALCS.
Yeah.
Hey, you're just in here to save everybody else. And if your ERA looks terrible at the end of the postseason and you still get a ring, we're not putting your ERA on the ring. Doesn't matter. You contributed in some way. So for him to really take to that and still show some interesting stuff and show unique stuff. And we talk so much today about like everybody throws 95 with a slider. To get somebody who's doing something a little bit different and it's going to send guys back to the dugout shaking their heads of like, what is that pitch? I'll never see it again. Is pretty cool. So testament to him for like continuing on and not just giving up on the game at any point. And, you know, it's not the career we envisioned for Brent Honeywell. Everybody thought he was going to be the ace of the Rays for years and years and years, but if he's a World Series champ, he's a World Series champ. That thing is on your baseball reference page until the end of time.
Listen, I mean, if he still has time to see what happens in terms of his legacy, but you know, it always ends up this way where you have a guy who you just like, whether it's June, July, August, September, or even early October, you're like, well, this guy isn't even on the radar. I mean, Honeywell didn't make I don't think he made the roster at the gate, the playoff roster at the gate. And he you there?
Yeah.
Okay. And he ends up as you said, saving the bullpen on multiple occasions. Ryan Brazier, I was talking about the Evaldi game in 2018, you know, the 18-inning game, and he compared what Honeywell did, you know, not exactly the same, but to Evaldi, that same thing where you're like, all right, you know, everybody understands what you did. And then you have the pitch and I just love how passionately he talks about the pitch and how he said, you know, like there is such this misconception with it. It doesn't hurt arms. Because that was always it with
right, yeah,
right. It's you can't throw it; it's gonna blow out your elbow. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up. That's an excellent one. Yeah.
I mean, it's every time I see him, I remember he signed with the Padres at one point, and I do our Padres top 30, and I was asking around, I'm like, should I add him to the Padres top 30? He's still Brent Honeywell, and everybody's like, oh, I don't know, who knows with all the arm injuries, and here he is proving everybody wrong by just being out there.
Yeah. All right, Sam. Well, you prove everyone right, and every time everyone says you're awesome. So thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Rob.